بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وخاتم النبيين محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Respected listeners, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Yesterday we finished speaking about Surah Hud. Today we move on to Surah Yusuf. With the exception of 4 verses, Surah Yusuf is a Meccan surah. In this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about more or less the story of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam throughout. In other parts of the Quran, Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam has been mentioned. However, this is the only surah in which his complete story is mentioned. According to some narrations, some of the Jews at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, to test him, they had asked him that if you are a true prophet, then tell us why did the family of Yaqub alayhi salam move from Syria to Egypt, and what happened to Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. And it was in response to this that the whole story was revealed. And in itself, this was a miracle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and proof of his prophethood, because he was an ummi, an unlettered person who had not been taught by anybody. He hadn't read a book before, yet he was able to narrate all of these events which were mentioned in the Torah. And one of the reasons why they felt that they should pose this question is because the story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam was in the Torah, but it was in Hebrew and not in Arabic. So they didn't think that he would be able to narrate the story. In any case, the Surah Yusuf was revealed. According to other narrations, we learn that the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum had requested Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to narrate to them a story. So then Allah says, "Nahnu naqussu alayk ahsan al-qasas," that we relate unto you the best of stories. Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi radiyallahu anhu, he once, after the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, news had spread that he had arrived in one of the masajid in Madain, and the people gathered to listen from Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi radiyallahu anhu. They wanted to hear his accounts of his time with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and stories of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum and what they had done during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, when the people had gathered, according to some narrations, there was about 1,000 of them had gathered in the masjid, eagerly to listen to Sayyidina Salman radiyallahu anhu. Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi radiyallahu anhu, he sat on the pulpit and he began reciting Surah Yusuf. So he didn't go through any stories or anything, he just sat down and began reciting Surah Yusuf. Slowly, the people stood up and they left, started walking away, until there were only a few people left. And then Sayyidina Salman al-Farisi radiyallahu anhu said, "Az-zukhruf min al-qawli aradtum," that what was it that you wanted from me? Embellished speech? That you thought I was going to say this and that, and I relate unto you the most beautiful story as classed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, and then you walk away. So, and I've mentioned this before, that the Quran wasn't about storytelling. And even here, with the story of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, the intention, the aim wasn't to just narrate a story, But along with this, there were many lessons to be learnt from the life of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and we'll understand and learn them as we move along. The story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam begins here. What Allah says, إِذْ قَالَ يُوسُفُ لِأَبِيهِ يَا أَبَتِ إِنِّي رَأَيْتُ أَحَدَ عَشَرَ كَوْكَبًا وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ رَأَيْتُهُمْ لِي سَاجِدِينَ. That when Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam said to his father, "Oh my father, I saw," meaning in a dream, 11 stars and the sun and the moon prostrating before me. Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he was the son of Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam. Once the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum asked Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who was the most noblest of all? So he said, Kareem ibn al-Kareem ibn al-Kareem ibn al-Kareem, meaning the noble one, the son of the noble one, the son of the noble one, the son of the noble one. Meaning he was Kareem, the first one was Yusuf, the son of Yaqub, the son of Ishaq, the son of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. And in other ahadith, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam has spoken and mentioned Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and we'll speak about these as we move along. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, now with this surah, I'll pretty much translate loosely the verses of Surah Yusuf, because the story has been mentioned in detail. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam had a dream. And as a child, and in his dream, he saw that there were 11 stars, the sun and the moon, and they were all prostrating before him. When he woke up, he told his father, Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, about the dream. His father became extremely happy as he understood that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam would grow to be a very important person, a prophet of Allah. But he told Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam not to tell his brothers about the dream. Now, Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, many of his brothers they were half-brothers, and they were jealous of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam already, because his father loved Yusuf very dearly. So Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam told him not to tell his brothers about the dream, because then their hatred towards him will intensify. However, Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, being a young child, he ended up telling his brothers about the dream. This infuriated his brothers further, and then they began plotting and making plans to get rid of Yusuf, and they thought, how can we have the love of our father purely for us? So, and Allah mentions this, and they said, إِذْ قَالُوا لَيُوسُفُ وَأَخُوهُ أَحَبُّ إِلَىٰ أَبِينَا مِنَّا وَنَحْنُ عُصْبَةٌ. They said that Yusuf and his brother, meaning his younger brother Binyamin, they are far more beloved to our father than us. So they made a plan and they said, let's kill Yusuf. However, one of them, and according to some narrations, his name was Yehuda, he objected and said, look, let's not kill him, but we'll do something else. So they then agreed to throw him into a well. So they thought that how can we get him away from our father to be able to carry this out? So then they came to their father and they asked their father that, why don't you let Yusuf come out to play with us? And he'll have a good time. We'll get some time to spend with him. And the father, he expressed his worries and concerns that, I'm worried that when you leave him, and you're playing, because they were older, they'd obviously play games that were more suited for their ages. So he felt that if you leave him with your bags, for example, then I'm afraid that a wolf or something may come and devour him. So they said, no, how can a wolf devour him when we are young and strong? So in the end, Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, he agreed, and he allowed Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam to go with them. Now, according to different narrations, they beat him first, and in some narrations it suggested that they nearly killed him. But then the older brother, who had previously suggested that they shouldn't kill him, he said, look, you promised me that you wouldn't kill him. So then they stopped, and then they threw him into a well. Even as he was going into the well, he begged them, and he said, look, let's go back to Father, and I'll take the blame for all of this. But then they wouldn't agree. Rather, they mocked him, and they said, why don't you tell the sun and the moon and the stars which prostrate to you, why don't you ask them to help you? In any case, they took Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, put him into the well, and then they left. Allah mentions here as well that وَجَاءُوا أَبَاهُمْ عِشَاءً يَبْكُونَ, and they came to their father in the evening crying. And then they said to their father that we went to run races and we left Yusuf with our bags, and then a wolf devoured him. According to narrations, we hear that Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam began crying, and they presented Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam's shirt, which they had soaked in the blood of a goat, and they said, look, here is his shirt as proof, full of blood, that he had been killed. So Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, he held the shirt to his face, and he said, what a merciful wolf that it didn't tear my son's shirt to pieces. In any case, Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, he remained patient. Then Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam was in the well, and Allah had revealed to him that, don't worry, one day you will inform your brothers about what they did. Now, this wasn't exactly wahi as such, but it was similar to an inspiration, like when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspired the mother of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam when she was fearful about casting him into the river. So she didn't receive a wahi, but it was an inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this was similar to that, because Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam wasn't at a position to have been granted that wahi at that time. In any case, Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he stayed in the well. It happened so that a group of travelers were passing by at the time, and they sent somebody to draw water from the well. That person lowered the bucket into the well. Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he scrambled into the bucket, and then the person, he lifted up the bucket and found Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. He says, Ya bushra hadha ghulam, this is a child. So then different narrations suggest different things. According to some narrations, it is mentioned that some of the brothers were present at the time, and they told Yusuf to stay quiet, and they told these merchants, these traders, that this was a slave of ours who was run away, and they bought him off. The traders took him off the brothers there. In any case, when he got to Egypt with the group of traders, they sold him there in the marketplace to the Aziz of Egypt for a few coins. And this is all mentioned here. The Aziz of Egypt, he took Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam home, and he told his wife to look after him and Allah mentions it here that it's possible that Yusuf can benefit us one day, or we can take him as a child. And then Allah mentions some of the favours that He had bestowed upon Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. Now, growing up in the house of the Aziz of Egypt, Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he grew up to be a young man. And the wife of the Aziz, she fell in love with him. And she tried to invite him to sin. However, Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, destined to be a prophet of Allah, he refrained. And this is all mentioned here, that she desired him, and he would have desired her had he not seen the signs of his Lord. Meaning, according to some narrations, he saw an image of Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, which prevented him from succumbing to her desires. In any case, he ran from her, and she grabbed him from behind, grabbed his shirt from behind, and tore his shirt. And there at the door, they found his owner there. So rather than staying quiet or admitting to her sin, she turned the tables on Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. She said, "Ma jaza'u man arada bi ahlika su'an illa an yusjana aw 'adhabun alim." What is the punishment of one who intends evil with your wife or family, except that he should either be imprisoned or should face a severe punishment? So then Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam said, no, she tried to seduce me and invite me to sin. And then Allah says, وَشَهِدَ شَاهِدٌ مِّنْ أَهْلِهَا. According to some narrations, this shahid, this meaning a witness, testified from her family, meaning somebody was there that testified that it wasn't Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam that was intending sin, rather it was the other way around. And throughout we learn of a few occasions where children, even in the cradle, have spoken out to protect somebody who was being wrongly accused. This happened during the time of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, when Maryam alayhi salam, and she came back with Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, and the people began to ask her, where is this child from? And then she pointed to the child, and they mocked her to say that, what can this baby say? So then Isa alayhi salatu wasalam spoke out, Inni Abdullah, I am the servant of Allah. And then he spoke. And then there's also the incident of when there was a conspiracy against Jurayj, who was a pious elder from amongst Banu Israel. It was a newborn child who testified to his innocence. So even with Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, it said that this small child was lying in a cradle in this house. And this child spoke out. And the way to see this would be that if the shirt that was torn, if it was torn from the front, then Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam would be proven guilty. And if it was from the back, then it would be the wife of the Aziz. So when they, and the narrations give her name as Zulaykha. So when they went to see, they found that the shirt was torn from the back. So it was proven that it was Zulaykha who was the one who was guilty. But then, so the Aziz then turned around and said that this is of your plots. Indeed, your plots are great. And then he turned to Yusuf and says, Yusuf, that Yusuf, don't look into this, turn away from this. And then he said to his wife, Astaghfiri li dhanbik, and seek forgiveness for your sins. Now, this whole story about the Zulaykha falling in love with Yusuf, news of this spread, and the women of the city began mocking Zulaykha for falling in love with her slave. So she decided to show them Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, so they could understand why she had become infatuated with him. So she invited them all for a meal. And when they all sat down and they were about to cut their fruit, she asked Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam to come out unto them. And as soon as he stepped in, they saw him, and Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam had been given beauty. And they all, in surprise, they said, "Ma hadha illa bashar, hasha lillah, ma hadha bashar." This isn't a human being. This is some noble angel. And in error, rather than cutting their fruit, they cut their fingers, and this is mentioned here in Surah Yusuf. So then they also, along with her, they began saying to Yusuf that, "Look, Yusuf, she's a noble person. Why don't you accept her requests?" So that's when Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he couldn't take the pressure anymore, and he prayed to Allah, "Rabbi as-sijnu ahabbu ilayya mimma yad'unani ilayh." Oh my Lord, the dungeon, the prison, is far beloved to me than that which they are calling me towards. وَإِلَّا تَصْرِفْ عَنِّي كَيْدَهُنَّ أَصْبُ إِلَيْهِنَّ وَأَكُن مِّنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ. And if you don't turn away from me their plots, then I shall be inclined towards them, and I shall be of the ignorant. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says in the hadith, and may Allah have mercy on Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, had he sought afiyah, meaning protection, and not sought prison, then Allah would have protected him without him having to go through prison. Anyway, this was a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah mentions here that ثُمَّ بَدَا لَهُم مِّن بَعْدِ مَا رَأَوُا الْآيَاتِ لَيَسْجُنُنَّهُ حَتَّى حِينٍ. Then it became apparent for them after they had seen the signs, meaning they had seen very clearly that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam was innocent and he hadn't done anything wrong. Even then, they sought to imprison him. So then Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he stayed in prison for many years. Now, in the prison, 2 young men came to him. Now, the people of the prison had observed Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and they observed him to be a noble person. And they respected him. So these 2, they came to Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. Now, Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, not only just the people who were in the prison, but even the officers there, they all respected him. Now, one of them expressed to him that, "Oh Yusuf, we love you very much." So he said that, "Look, don't love me. Your love, keep it to yourself. Because whenever I have been loved by anyone, I have suffered one way or another. When I was a child, my paternal aunt loved me, and as a result, I was blamed for theft. Then my father loved me, and as a result of this, I was thrown into a well and then into slavery, and then expelled from my home country. And then the wife of the Aziz fell in love with me, and now I'm in prison." So he said, "Don't say you love me." In any case, 2 men came to Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. These 2 had been imprisoned because of a conspiracy against the king at the time to have him poisoned. One was a baker, and the other one was a person who would serve the king wine. So he was the royal cupbearer. So the cupbearer said that, "I saw in my dream that I'm pressing wine." And the other one, the baker or the cook, said that, "I saw that I'd been carrying bread on top of my head, and then birds were eating from it. So then they requested Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam to interpret and tell them that what do these dreams mean. So then Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, without going straight into the interpretation and meaning of the dreams, he took this as an opportunity to invite them towards the religion of his forefathers, of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. So he said to them that before your food comes, I shall tell you the meaning. And then he began giving them da'wah and talking to them about deen. Then he told them that as for the cupbearer, he said the meaning is that you will be restored to duty and you will once again serve the king. And as for the other one, he said you will be killed and as a result, birds will eat from your corpse. As Sayyidina Yusuf ﷺ interpreted, this happened. The baker, the cook, was found guilty, and the cupbearer was restored to duty. Now, when the cupbearer was about to leave the prison, Sayyidina Yusuf ﷺ said, look, remember me, okay, and mention my situation to the king. However, Allah mentions here that the shaitan caused him, the cupbearer, to forget to mention Yusuf ﷺ, and he stayed in prison for many years. Now, when we say that Yusuf ﷺ stayed in prison for many years, this wasn't like the prisons that we have of today. He was in a dungeon, in very extreme and harsh conditions, not where you have all these different rights that you get in prison nowadays. But it was a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he stayed in prison for many years. Then the king, one day, he had a dream. In his dream, he saw that, and Allah mentions this here, that he saw 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 lean cows. And then he saw 7 ripe ears. And then along with that, he saw 7 ears of grain, which were green. And then he saw 7 others, which were dry. So the king, when he woke up, he mentioned this to his courtiers, and he asked them, what is the meaning of this? So they said, look, this is nothing to worry about. However, the cupbearer being present, he remembered Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. So he said to the king, look, wait, I will tell you the meaning of this dream. So then he came into the prison to find Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and he addressed him, Yusuf ayyuha as-siddiq, Yusuf, oh the truthful one, aftina, and then he told us tell us about this dream. So after he'd heard the dream, Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he interpreted the dream. So he realized and understood what the meaning of each thing was. So he explained that there would be 7 years of good crops followed by 7 years of famine. And then he added also that after this year there will be a year of good grains and crops. Meaning, he didn't just stick to the dream, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had also told him further about what would happen. So Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, and also he told them that what they should do to ensure the continuity of their economy and so that they can get through the famine and so on. Now, when this cupbearer went back and he informed the king of this interpretation, the king said that, where is this man who told you about the meaning of this dream? So then the king sent for Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam to come out of prison. When the caller came, and summoned Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, that the king's calling you. Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, no, before I leave, I want you to look back into my case. Subhanallah, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says in the hadith, rahmatullah, rahimahullahu akhi Yusuf, that may Allah have mercy upon my brother Yusuf. لو مكثت في السجن ما مكث ثم أتاني الداعي لأجبته. That had I stayed in the prison as long as he had stayed, then the caller was to have come to me, then I would have accepted. Meaning that I wouldn't have waited. I would have come straight away. And in fact, in another hadith, he mentions that even before interpreting the dream, I would have put conditions, that the only the condition that I would interpret this dream for you is if you allow me to leave this prison. But Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam was a man of great patience, and he said that no, open my case up and look into my case again. So his case was opened up and they investigated. Now remember, Zulaykha, even though she had accused him, but she deeply loved him, and she was very upset about the fact that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam had to go to prison. So then she said that, look, now the truth has become clear. I was the one who seduced him, and he is of the truthful. So then Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam says that this is so that they may know that I didn't betray them, meaning my master in his absence. Anyway, Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam left prison, an innocent man, and when he came to the king, he informed the king about the dream. The king had become aware of it, and Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam also mentioned to the king that, look, the people that you have in charge of the storehouses, they are not sincere, they are not truthful, they cheat. So put me in charge, and I will ensure that you are prepared fully for the years of famine to come. I will ensure that I collect grains and I save enough to get us through these times of famine. The king accepted, and Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he was placed in charge of the storehouses of Egypt. As Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam had predicted, the years of good came and then the years of famine followed. But Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam had made arrangements to ensure that they could get through the famine. Now, according to different narrations, we understand that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam's position was elevated and he became the ruler. And people flocked to Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam from all areas which had been afflicted by the famine, as they had heard of a noble king who is just and who looks after the people. Now, in Canaan, Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam with his sons, they had also been impacted by the famine. So he sent his sons to Egypt to go and collect some food. So the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, they entered. When they entered, Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam recognized them. However, they didn't recognize him. And however, when they came, Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam asked them a number of questions, and he treated them suspiciously. And he asked them questions that, where are you from? Do you have family? So they told him that we have a father, we have a younger brother as well. So he asked, why isn't your younger brother here? So that our father wouldn't let him come. So then he said, okay, this time I'll give you food, but next time if you don't come back with your brother, then there's no food for you. So their bags were packed with the food, and then Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam also secretly put their money back as well. When they returned, they mentioned to their father that, look, this is what happened, and look how honourable this king is, he even returned our money. But then he has said that the next time we go, we have to take Binyamin, our youngest brother, with us. Now, Yaqub ﷺ had his reservations. However, when the time came to go and collect more food, Sayyidina Yaqub ﷺ was faced with this test that how can he send Binyamin with them when the last time he sent Yusuf with them, Yusuf never came back. So in the end he agreed, but he made them make a promise that they would return with Binyamin. And this time he told his sons that when you enter the city, then enter from different gates. And the reason being is that he feared that somebody may cast an evil eye on them. So he told them to enter from different gates. One may think that, well, the first time he didn't ask them, so why the second time? The first time, remember, they entered the city, but they entered as travellers, they were unknown. But then they were given an unusual welcome. They had an audience with the king. So they had become more known now, so they'll become more recognised. So for that reason, he felt that they shouldn't enter. And according to some narrations, we understand that this beauty was given to, it was shared, meaning they were all very handsome as well. And this evil eye is something which is proven through the hadith. Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned about this as well. In fact, Sayyidina Sahl ibn Hunayf radiyallahu anhu, on one occasion, he took off his shirt to get ready to go for a bath. So Amr ibn Rabi'a radiyallahu anhu, he happened to look at him and he saw what a healthy body he had. So he made a remark and he said that, until this day I've never seen a body as handsome as this. No sooner did he say this, an instant high temperature seized Sahl ibn Hunayf radiyallahu anhu. And when the Prophet ﷺ was informed about it, the treatment he suggested was that Amr ibn Rabi'a should make wudu, collect the water from wudu in a utensil, and pour this water over the body of Sahl ibn Hunayf. And then when this was done, the temperature dropped down immediately. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he said to Amr ibn Rabi'a, عَلَى مَا يَقْتُلُ أَحَدُكُمْ أَخَاهُ أَلَّا بَرَّقْتَ إِنَّ الْعَيْنَ حَقٌّ. That why would one of you kill his own brother? Meaning when you saw his body, you should have made a dua for barakah. And it is true that the evil eye leaves its effect, and it has an effect. And that's why whenever we see something good in somebody, that's why we say MashaAllah or MashaAllah la quwwata illa billah. And in any case, Sayyidina Yaqub ﷺ told his sons to enter from different gates. When the brothers entered unto Sayyidina Yusuf ﷺ, and they had Binyamin with them, so then Binyamin, Sayyidina Yusuf ﷺ took him to the side and he disclosed his identity and he said, look, I am Yusuf, your brother. He was extremely happy to see Binyamin. Binyamin was equally happy, who thought his brother Yusuf had been killed or had passed away. Then Sayyidina Yusuf ﷺ, he wanted to keep Binyamin with him. He'd met his young brother after so many years. He wanted to keep him with him. So he made a plan that he said to Binyamin that, look, I'm going to keep you with me and I'm going to devise a plan to do this. So just play along. Now, what happened is he had a special cup that he would drink from. So Sayyidina Yusuf ﷺ had this cup put into the bag of Binyamin. And then when the brothers took off to return, a group of people came and said, stop, you have to return. The king is missing something and he wants to check your bags. So they said, look, we're not thieves. We haven't come to cause any mischief on the land. And they said, no, you've got to come. So they came, and then they said to Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, look, we haven't done anything. So then it was said to them that, okay, what about if we find out that it was one of you? What will be the punishment? So the punishment in those days was that if a person stole, then if they were caught, then they would become a slave of the person they stole from. So the brothers agreed that if you find it amongst us, then whoever's bags you find it amongst, that person would become your slave. So they searched all the bags, and they searched Binyamin's at the end, and then they found the cup inside Binyamin's bag. So then they said, يَسْرِقْ فَقَدْ سَرَقَ أَخٌ لَهُ مِنْ قَبْلِ, that if he stole, then a brother of his has stolen before him. Now what did they mean by this? It's mentioned that after the birth of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, shortly after Binyamin was born, but as a result of Binyamin's birth, his mother died. So Yusuf and Binyamin were left without a mother, and they were raised by their paternal aunt. Now, Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam was such that whoever saw him, they became deeply attached to him. And his paternal aunt really loved him. And she wouldn't let him disappear from her sight at any time. Now, as a child, needing a mother, Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam stayed with his paternal aunt for some time. However, when he had learnt to walk and grown a little, Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam wanted him back, but his aunt didn't want him to go back. So what she did is she handed him over, but then she had a plan to keep him. So she had an old waistband, like a belt, which had come through to her as a legacy of, according to some narrations, Sayyidina Ishaq, but according to some even from Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, it was highly valued. So she tied this underneath his dress. And then when the news is spread that this waistband had been stolen, they found it with Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. Now, according to their rules at the time, Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam had to agree to Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam staying with his aunt. So this was the event that they were referring to, that yasriq, that if he stole, meaning if Binyamin has stolen, then his brother Yusuf has stolen before him. Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam heard this, and he just stayed quiet. But in his heart he said that, what are you saying? And Allah mentions this as well, that he said, قَالَ أَنْتُمْ شَرٌّ مَكَانًا, you are in a very evil state. Anyway, they pleaded with Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam to not keep him. They said, look, take one of us instead. We've made a promise with our father, but Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam said, no, how can we keep somebody else for somebody else's sin? How can we keep someone for somebody else's sin? So then they had no choice. So the oldest brother said to them, look, you made a promise to our father, so I can't face him anymore, so I'm not going to go, you lot go. So they returned to their father, and they related to him what had happened. Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam was already in sorrow. He hadn't forgotten about Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. And he even says, Ya asaf ala Yusuf, how I miss, or how I lament over Yusuf. And Quran mentions here about how he had become blind due to grief. So then he said to his sons, look, go back, and then look for, and he said, even then he hadn't lost hope in Yusuf. He says, فَتَحَسَّسُوا مِن يُوسُفَ وَأَخِيهِ, look for Yusuf and his brother, and do not lose hope in the mercy of Allah. So then they entered upon Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam again, and this was now for the third time. Now, according to some narrations, we learn that Sayyidina Yaqub actually gave a letter with them. And in the letter it's written from Yaqub, the son of Ishaq, the son of Ibrahim, to the Aziz of Misr. And then after praising Allah, he says that, look, our entire family is known for hardships and trials. My grandfather Ibrahim والسلام, was tested through the fire of Namrud. Then my father Ishaq والسلام, was also put to a hard test. Then I was tested through a son of mine, whom I held very dearly, to the limit that I even lost my eyesight when separated from him. Now after that there was this younger brother of Yusuf's, who served as a source of comfort for me in my grief, and now you've arrested him on a charge of theft. Now we are from the prophets, and we've never committed theft, nor has there been a thief among our children. So this was a request from Yaqub والسلام, pleading with the king. It is said that when Sayyidina Yusuf والسلام, read this letter, he trembled and broke into tears. And then he decided to let his secret out. And then he said to his brothers, هل علمتم ما فعلتم بيوسف وأخيه إذ أنتم جاهلون? Do you remember what you did with Yusuf and his brother when you were ignorant? And the brothers were in shock. They said, nobody knew about this. The only person who knows about this is Yusuf. And they said, إِنَّكَ لَأَنْتَ Yusuf? Are you Yusuf? He said, yes. أَنَا Yusuf وَهَذَا أَخِي. I am Yusuf, and this is my brother. قَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. That indeed Allah has shown His favour over us. إِنَّهُ مَن يَتَّقِ وَيَصْبِرْ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. This is the summary of the whole story and the lesson of the whole story of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. People have seen the story, or they take the story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam as a love story, as a romantic tale, but far from it. His story was a story of patience, not just of Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam, but a father's patience over the loss of his son, a son's patience over being taken away from his father, and then the fear of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam of Allah when being invited to sin, his taqwa and his forbearance, his patience, his knowledge, all of this. This is what, in reality, we see throughout the life of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. And Allah summarizes all of it here by saying, إِنَّهُ مَن يَتَّقِ وَيَصْبِرْ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Indeed, he who adopts taqwa and remains patient, then indeed Allah does not allow the deeds of those who do good to go to waste. This is the summary of all the lessons we learn, taqwa and patience. This was throughout the story and the life of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. The brothers then said to Allah, لَقَدْ آثَرَكَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا وَإِن كُنَّا لَخَاطِئِينَ. That indeed Allah has preferred you over us and we were wrongdoers. And then they were fearful that they would be punished. But then Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam said to them, لَا تَثْرِيبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْيَوْمِ. There is no blame on you today, meaning there is no punishment on you today. يَغْفِرُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. May Allah forgive you, and He is most merciful. So then he gave his shirts, and he said to them, look, this is my shirt. Take it and throw it over the face of my father. His sight will return. According to some of the commentators, they have said that this shirt was very special, and it was brought from Jannah for Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam at the time when he was thrown into the fire by Namrud, because they threw him naked into the fire. And it remained preserved with Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. And after his death, it was passed on to Sayyidina Ishaq. Then it came to the possession of Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam. And according to some, he would make Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam wear it for protection. And then he was actually in the well with the same shirts as well. So it remained with Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and he gave it to his brothers to say that, throw it over my father's face and his sight will return. The Quran mentions here about when the caravan left from Egypt, the Yaqub alayhi salam on the other side, he said, I can smell the fragrance of Yusuf. So the people around him said that you're in your old waywardness. So when the person giving the glad tidings came and he threw the shirt over the face of Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, his sight returned, and then he said to them that, did I not say to you that I know that which you do not know? So then the brothers, they asked their father, O father, seek forgiveness on our behalf for our sins, for we were wrongdoers. So then Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam said, Sawfa astaghfiru lakum Rabbi, that soon I shall seek forgiveness for you. One of the reasons for this was that, why didn't he say that I'll seek forgiveness for you now? Because he wanted to see first if Yusuf had forgiven them. And this is the thing with huquq al-ibad, that with huquq al-ibad, one has to seek forgiveness from the person who they have wronged. So not only seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also from the person who they have wronged. In any case, they all came and they returned to Egypt with, the whole family returned with Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam in front of Yusuf. Allah mentions here that when they came, he elevated his parents onto the throne and they all fell down for him in prostration. Now, Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam's mother wasn't alive, so who was this? It said that after his mother passed away, Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam married her sister, Layya, her name was. And so she was a maternal aunt of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. So that's why Allah mentions Abuwayhi, parents. So when they prostrated before him, Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salam, and this was permissible in this prostration before him, this was permissible in their Sharia. It was out of respect. And then he said to his father, "Oh, my father, this is the interpretation and the meaning of my dream from before," meaning the dream I had as a child of the 11 stars and the moon and the sun prostrating before me. This is the meaning of that dream. My Lord has made it true, and he showed his favor upon me when he took me out from the prison and brought you from the countryside after the shaitan had caused a rift between me and my brothers. And then he made a prayer. And think about it. This was his moment of glory. After all these years of being separated from his father and his brothers who had done so much to him. But now Yusuf ﷺ was at a peak of his glory, where he was now the ruler. His brothers had realized their mistakes and had sought his forgiveness. His parents were here. But just like we learned the other day about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and this was the sunnah of the Anbiya alayhi wasallam, that in their moments of glory, rather than being haughty and arrogant, they were extremely humbled at that time. And he said, he made a prayer that رَبِّ قَدْ آتَيْتَنِي مِنَ الْمُلْكِ وَعَلَّمْتَنِي مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ فَاطِرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ أَنْتَ وَلِيِّي فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ تَوَفَّنِي مُسْلِمًا وَأَلْحِقْنِي بِالصَّالِحِينَ. My Lord, you have given me of power, and you have taught me the knowledge of interpreting events or dreams. You are the creator, O creator of the heavens and the earth. You are my guardian in this world and the hereafter. Make me die a Muslim and make me join the righteous. This was similar to the dua of Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, who again in his moment of glory, which we spoke about the other day when he prayed that Rabbi awzi'ni an ashkura ni'mataka allati an'amta alayya wa ala walidayya wa an a'mala salihan tardahu wa adkhilni bi rahmatika fi ibadika as-salihin. That, oh my Lord, give me the ability to be grateful of your favour which you have bestowed upon me and upon my parents, and give me the ability to do good through which you are pleased with me, and enter me through your mercy into your pious servants. So this is what our prayer should be. Not that, oh Allah, make me this and make me that. All that we want is to be entered as the pious servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran finishes speaking about the story of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam here. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذَلِكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الْغَيْبِ نُوحِيهِ إِلَيْكَ, meaning to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that is of the reports of the unseen that we reveal to you. And words like this, meaning the news or reports of the unseen, these are mentioned in different parts of the Quran. In another verse Allah says, تِلْكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الْغَيْبِ نُوحِيهَا إِلَيْكَ. These are again reports from the unseen which we reveal to you. From verses like this we understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala often communicates to his prophets many times in news of the unseen through wahi. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was blessed with this many times, which is why he was able to tell us about things that would happen in the future, including the events that would happen right for the Day of Judgment. However, there is a difference between, for example, Allah says, لا يعلم من في السماوات والأرض الغيب إلا الله, that none know, meaning those who are in the skies and the earth do not know the unseen except Allah. So there's a difference between knowing or being informed of news of the unseen and to have knowledge of the unseen. Knowledge of the unseen is something that is only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would often be told about news of the unseen. So there's a slight difference there. I mean, well, there's a big difference, but this is it. Allah alone is the knower of the unseen, alimul ghaib. With this, we finish the story of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. Again, the story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam is a story full of trials, tests from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in many ways, the story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam is similar to that of our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The beginning of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam's prophethood, what was it marked by? A dream. Similarly, Mu'mineen Aisha radiyallahu anha narrates that the first signs of revelations of Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam were through dreams. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, his dream was that he saw the 11 stars and the sun and the moon, they were prostrating before him. And similarly, just like Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, his brothers were jealous of him. They beat him, they tortured him. They even tried to kill him. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he kept patient. And he continued to seek Allah's help. And then Allah granted him victory. And then when the brothers finally, after many years, when they came back to him and he informed them of what they did, just as Allah promised him he would, what did he say to them? لا تثريب عليكم اليوم, that there should be no reproach unto you today. May Allah forgive you, and He's the kindest. Similarly, with the Prophet ﷺ, the Quraysh, they tortured him, they taunted him, they were jealous of him. I mentioned the other day, Abu Jahl, one of the reasons why he refused to accept, even though when he was sitting with his companion asked him that, do you actually believe in Muhammad? And he said, yes, I do. But how can we let, they already have, his family already has the responsibility of giving water to the pilgrims, and they have the keys of the Kaaba. We're going to let them have prophethood as well. So the Quraysh, they taunted, they even tried to kill him. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him. And then in the 8th year of Hijrah, when the Prophet ﷺ returned after the conquest of Mecca, what did he say? Exactly the same words. And he even said to them as well, that today I shall say to you, just as Yusuf ﷺ said to his brothers, لا تثريب عليكم اليوم, there should be no reproach on you today. Sayyidina Yusuf ﷺ, throughout his life, he showed abstinence, he had taqwa, and even being in his prime youth, yet he refrained from temptation. And don't we see that the same in the story of the Prophet ﷺ, when the Meccans and the Quraysh, they came to him and they offered him their daughters, and they said that we will give you half the wealth of Mecca, and according to different narrations, this and that, and the women of Mecca. The Prophet ﷺ, again, he said no. So there were many similarities between the story of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We then recite Surah Al-Ra'd. Surah Al-Ra'd is a Meccan surah. Ra'd means the thunder. In this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's a Meccan surah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions subjects such as the truth, the Quran, Tawheed, speaks about prophethood and so on, some of the answers to doubts raised about all of these. He speaks about some of his nizam in the world and how he has placed different creations of his to serve other creations and so on, meaning the sun, the moon, and all of these different things are mentioned in this surah. Allah mentions about how the people they raised doubts about how after dying we shall be raised again. So Allah answers this. He speaks about His knowledge and how He has knowledge of everything. Then He mentions a verse, لَهُ مُعَقِّبَاتٌ مِّن بَيْنِ يَدَيْهِ وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِ يَحْفَظُونَهُ مِنْ أَمْرِ اللَّهِ, that for Him there are angels replacing each other before Him and behind Him, who guard Him under the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, this refers to a specific group of angels whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed. And we learn from the ahadith as well that there are two groups of angels who have been appointed to guard human beings. One for the day and one for the night. One group for the day and the other group for the night. And they meet during the prayers of Fajr and Asr, and they swap. And in a hadith we learn from Sayyidina Ali radiyallahu anhu that for every human being there are guardian angels appointed to protect him or her. And it is their duty to keep guarding them lest a wall or something else falls over them, or they stumble into a ditch or a cave, or some animal or man causes hurt or harm to them. However, when the will of Allah comes, then the guardian angels, they move away from this person. In the hadith, from the Sayyidina Uthman radiyallahu anhu, we learn that these angels aren't just there to protect human beings from worldly discomforts and hardships, but also to dissuade man from sin and to keep them safe. And even if they were to commit a sin, then they try to inspire this person to pray for forgiveness and to repent. So this is mentioned here. Allah then speaks about how a nation can change itself and can better itself, but they need to do that actively if they wish for some change to come. He speaks about how even the thunder hymns the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala along with the angels. Allah speaks about His dominance and His sovereignty. And some of the demands of the mushrikeen of Makkah are mentioned in this surah as well. Once Abu Jahl and Abdullah bin Umayyah came to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they sent some demands to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they said that if you want us to accept you as a messenger of Allah, we've got a few demands, fulfill them through this Quran of yours and we shall embrace Islam. One of the demands was that the land of Makkah there wasn't enough space, and they were surrounded by mountains. So they asked that, look, have these mountains move further away so that the area of Makkah becomes more extensive. And they said that, look, the mountains were subjugated for Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam. So, you're no less a person than Dawood, so let's see you do this. And then another one they had was that, just as the wind had been subjugated for Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, and he was able to travel quickly, so they said that, do the same for us so that we can travel to Syria and Yemen easily for trade and so on. And then the other thing that they said is that just the way Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wasalam could make the dead come alive, and let's see you do some of this as well, and then bring back our forefather Qusay, and then we can ask him whether this religion brought by you was true or not. So Allah says that, look, no matter what they ask for, they will never believe anyway. And Allah mentions that many prophets before you were also ridiculed by their people, because their intention through all of this was to mock the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. With this, we completed the Surah Al-Ra'd. We then come into Surah Ibrahim, which we'll talk about tomorrow. May Allah give us all the ability to understand. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.